right. Welcome to Hello Chaos, the unfiltered podcast for founders, really in the messy middle. No fairy tales here, just the real grind, the grit, and chaos of building a business. Today, I have a special podcast. It's actually going to be a bonus episode. I've got Doug Lineberry here. He is with Offit Kurman. Kurman. I always want to say it's like Offit. It's not on
Offit
it.
Kurman.
It's
Yep.
Offit Kurman
That's it.
because they're gonna off him. They're gonna off Kurman. But we got and you know Doug and I are old friends. He is our counsel when it comes to trademark and IP with both Orange Whip and Bright Marketing. But we got into an interesting conversation not that long ago around you're a law firm that helps small to mid-sized enterprises, even like again big corporations too, but for the most part you're kind of helping that small to mid-sized company, talking to it's like from that viewpoint talking to me and an agency owner, a marketing agency that supports and serves again small business to mid-sized enterprises. And we were talking about um, the whole idea and the concept of hiring agencies or hiring law firms or what in a fractional sense. And some people see the benefit of it. Some people are still kind of skeptical or feel like so I just want to talk through the good, the bad, and the ugly, because we look at it as, I think, in our both of our worlds, if you hire somebody with that expertise in a fractional sense, especially if you're a small business, you probably don't need that person for running those tasks for 2,000 hours a
That's
year.
right.
So from an efficiencies, from a affordability for the value you get, to look at kind of like hiring in a fractional model. But you brought up, and this is why I think we were like, oh, this is such a good conversation because it's all about mitigating risk. I mean, that's what your whole world is of risk mitigation. But I look at it as like, marketing industry. It's just a weird. We're one of the only industries that have to go through an RFP process, share our process, our approach, and sometimes our work, which we don't participate. If anybody wants free work, we don't do that. We know that's like not the business for us. But you don't see that in architecture firms. You don't see that in design firms. You don't see that in accounting where, hey, let me vet you 10 companies.
Mhm.
You give me all of your secret sauce and whoever saves me the most money, that's
Yeah.
who I'm going to hire. Whoever writes the best brief, that's who I'm going to hire. But it's weird. That's been our industry. And same with when I talk to small businesses of like, why are you are a 15 staff person and you aren't even like a $10 million, organization.
Yep.
Why out of your 15 people, why do you have 3 full-time marketing people?
Yep.
That is insane. And they look at it and go, well, but I have somebody for social and I need somebody to help me create content and I need somebody that's just like coordinates stuff. And nothing is tied to revenue. Nothing is tied to KPIs or growth, or growth. And I look at it and I was like, they don't do that they're not hiring a general counsel and an IP attorney and a, contractor, like contract law. I was like, that's why you go to law firms to kind of get that specialty, that advice, that counsel. Um, so you don't have to have that. So I
Yeah.
know you were running into that. You were like, that's an aha
Mhm.
for, for
Well,
you.
it is an aha, Jennifer, because if you're a small business, you've got to be nimble. And I
Yeah.
do small, medium, and large, and it's so funny. Sometimes they share these issues. Sometimes you've got a large client that's got way too, and no offense, way too many marketing people,
Oh, yeah.
and you need to
And
add.
none of them uh, are generating like point back to bottom line
That's right.
results.
And Jennifer, that was a big thing when we were talking about the others, ROI,
Yep.
return on investment.
Yep.
Like, you and I are doing this today to get out there and hopefully educate people, but also to expose people to our various services,
Right.
legal and
Right.
marketing. What's our ROI on this? Now, what are we going to get back? And so I think that's what you've got to ask as a small business is, hey,
Right.
is a fractional better than buying a full-time attorney? He goes, trust me, if you want a full-time attorney, you better be a substantial business, or you're going to find yourself with an attorney who's going to be bored and then start, what is it? Idle hands are the devil's tool.
Right.
You need to have a certain threshold of work to keep that attorney busy.
Right.
And if not, then you don't really need an attorney. You probably need a firm or, maybe a consultant who can come in to help you with
Right.
that.
Yeah.
Same with marketing. And there's a certain nimbleness about that too, Jennifer, because guess what? You don't have to eat the same hamburger every day.
Right.
If you're like, hey, I'm going to use you as a fractional this, and
Right.
maybe I'll come back to you and I want you to be a fractional that the next time, you've got that ability.
Right.
But
And
if you hire somebody,
yeah.
they're permanent.
Quick note, our next round of field guides are in production and we're closing sponsor slots soon. So get on board. We've got 3 field guides that are in the works. We have a founder starter kit, we have a pre-seed playbook, and then we've taken an independent view of the South Carolina ecosystem because that's the state that we are based in. We took an independent lens in the innovation ecosystem and the gaps and what's needed, the opportunities that exist for founders. It's a really interesting perspective of the ecosystem, and we're looking for partners and sponsors for that field guide. We'd love to feature sponsors who believe in building better ecosystems for entrepreneurs, organizations that want real visibility among founders and business owners, or organizations that are ready to be a part of something that delivers value and not noise in the space. So you can sponsor the Hello Chaos podcast, our digital field guides, the resource navigator, the dynamic resource navigator. You can sponsor even the weekly whip that founders use to find the information they need quickly in order to scale and grow. So if you're interested in supporting our community, go to our website at Orange Whip, and that's Orange WIP for work in progress. Download a media kit or send an email to hello@orangewhipwip.com. And we will work with you to align what your needs are, your content, and how do we deliver that into our founder community. Right. You're stuck with that overhead, that salary. I mean, I just had this conversation with another, like I call partner, a new startup that specializes in tech stacks.
Mhm.
And I'm like, hey, we're a guinea pig. If you guys need a test on us, we are happy to like play around and as they're trying to figure out their startup, their pitch and stuff. But it was interesting of talking to them. They're like, you know, small businesses and mid-sized business, and like I said, we work with small, medium, and large, but we really cater to the small to medium because they don't have large companies have access to the big agencies where I came from. That's my background. That's my team's background. That big, what we call big agency thinking, where how to identify if it's a branding problem or if it's a marketing ecosystem engine problem or if it's an advertise and how to appropriately prioritize based on where you need to how you need to reduce friction and grow. And we saw that the small to medium guys didn't have access to that knowledge.
Sure thing.
And what we were finding is the agencies that feed or serve that space are either predator agencies, scammers, that I don't know if it's we've seen it both ways. We've seen inexperience, like pure, I'm a guy with a computer, I got my certifications with Google, and now I picked up a couple clients, and this is what I do. I just turn the specific like task that I do, and I'm just going to work with small businesses because they don't even know how to hire, right? They're hiring me because they were told they need SEO. They're hiring me because they were told that they need social media or whatever. And then that company churns through agencies like that. And we see it like 4, 6, 10 agencies in like 3 years. and and then there's other companies that have designed their business models to actually be a prey and a predator
Yeah.
on the small business, knowing they don't know how to hire, and they can get away with basically siphoning large money, 10 grand a month, sometimes 15 grand a month, 6 months, a year, and deliver nothing because it's smoke and mirrors. It's just like regurgitating fake data.
Sure.
And so we've seen that it's exploded kind of in our industry the last few years. But the my point being, like, now small businesses, there's this skepticism for marketing people. There's a distaste for agencies, and it's because they've been burned.
Sure.
And but I was like, we need to. So part of me, like, I need to get on a soapbox and protect the category that I love,
Sure.
right? But also at the same time, man, like, there's not a lot of us out there that really do serve and has created a business model to serve the
Mhm.
business owner who um, they hire because they're told that's what you're supposed to do, and they think of marketing as overhead.
Mm.
Of, well, I was told well, of course I need social media, so therefore I better hire somebody for it or work with an agency to do it.
Yep.
And we come in and we go, why? Like, you're a small business. You have to be super intentional about your time, money, and resources. Your priority today might not be social media. That's a long runway. SEO, not saying it's not important, with social media or SEO, but those are long runways. What do you need? And we're like, our model and our pro is to be nimble around. Hey, look, you're hiring 3 people. You're spending probably 150, 200, 300,000, and it's all cut up in salaries. Or you're outsourcing to 2 or 3 agencies and it's in silos and fragmented. And then the weight is on you, the owner, or maybe the operations person, going, I don't know how to tie it all together.
Sure.
Or is what we're doing, is it working? Is there an ROI? Because we come in and start asking questions like, well, what's your acquisition? Your cost of customer acquisition. What is your total ROI? What is your ROAS in comparison to the ROAI or the ROI? And they're like, I have no idea. I've never calculated it before. And so, like I said, we've kind of designed that model, seeing that big gap in knowledge, seeing the gap in the way agencies are set up. Of, we don't just we're not selling products. We're going to crawl, walk, and run with you in a fractional sense, um, and tackle the priorities as they as they come up, and work the friction out. But it's just,
Jennifer,
you and
let
I
me
talk.
ask you the
Yeah,
million
yeah,
dollar
yeah,
question.
yeah, yeah.
How does somebody know they need you? Or how does somebody learn that they need you?
So here's what I tell people, and this is how most of my conversations go. It's because they know in their gut, like, and it usually comes from like a CEO. We are never hired by like the internal marketing people.
Mm.
We have, I mean, in the 10 plus years we've been in business, we are always brought in by like a C-level, VP level person,
Okay.
whether it is like a chief marketing officer or a COO, a CFO, or a CEO, who they go, we we know something isn't working, but
Mhm.
we don't really know what. We're trying to grow, and we just feel like we feel this friction, this tension. Um, and we go ask, like, we've either churned through a marketing people, um, and nobody seems to get it. right? Or we hear, because I'll ask, like, what have you done? You know, why why did you call, like, what? And a lot of it is that, you know, we put out content, and it's like, what you said something that sparked it. And most of it, when I go back and look at, like, well, what was it? And it's because we've questioned of, you're trying to grow and nothing is aligned. Like, you either, do you have a business plan? Like, do you have a plan for growth? Um, if you do not have a plan for growth, as in you're a CEO, are you just saying, we're growing 5% this year because we've always grown 5%? Or was there some intentionality of, like, oh, no, we need to grow 10% or 20%, whatever that is. Most companies might have, like, we just want to grow some percentage, but there's no rationale for that. And so that becomes like a question of, well, where'd you get that number? Where'd that number come from? And then the next question is, okay, do you have your entire organization aligned to hit that number? Is there an action plan that um, that has, like, backward retrofitted to go, hey, we need to grow 20%? Is that because the market is growing, or is it because we need to take market share from a competitor? Well, also, what if a new competitor comes in? How do we defend it? Like,
Sure.
going through those kind of answers, or, I'll throw out questions, and it, again, it sparks the, ooh, I don't have an answer for that. And sometimes it's you got to get people in the right mindset, because there is a lot of, like, I don't know. And I'm sure you run, it'd be interesting. Do you run into this in the legal sense of
Sure, we do.
shame or fear of acknowledging you don't really know what you're doing?
Oh gosh, yeah. And I mean, yeah, one of the one of an attorney's best and worst clients are the self helpers. You know, they're like, I'm gonna do it myself. I'll do it myself. I'll
Oh,
do my
like
own
through,
contract.
like the
Gonna do
LegalZoom stuff?
gonna do like LegalZoom, or worse yet, they just kind of like, hey, I'm gonna crank up the software and do it myself.
Oh.
Most of the times, you know, sometimes you'll get clients that get lucky. You know, I met a guy
Mhm.
this afternoon, owns a gun company down in Alabama, following his own marks, doing a good job. You know, and he called me with a question to where, you know, hey, you know, typically these things go through pretty smooth, and he had an issue come up they hadn't seen
Right.
before. And just like we're talking about, he thought to ask. He wasn't
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm just going to ballyhoo this. But we do have a lot of clients that will ballyhoo it. And then they'll
Right.
call back and be like, ooh, or call you for the first time, be like, yeah,
Let
you
me
know,
clean up. Yeah.
something's wrong. You know, something happened. I can't get this trademark and I really need it.
Right.
And so for our industry, you know, much like yours, Jennifer, is we do see that, you know, call them predatory. I think it's an awesome way to describe it
Yeah.
because it's always advertised as low cost, but then
Yeah.
there's Christian at it. Or it's
Right.
always, you know, always available, meaning you're going to be fed
Right.
whomever's man on the
Because
phone.
we'll get the, oh, you do this, you're going to 10x your business.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Or, you know, costs will be cut by X%. And I'm like, in the world of those things, you get what you pay
Right.
for. You know, you
Right.
want a
Oh, yeah.
marketer who thinks about your stuff, you want an attorney who thinks about your stuff.
Right.
If
And
you got an
and
go
know
ahead.
what questions to look for. And,
Yes.
because,
You know?
we always say, there's a lot of there, like, I caught the overload of, we're ROI driven, or we're
Sure.
data driven. And we
Sure.
said that same thing too, until we started really looking our space, and it's like, what we really do, yes, we look at data, but
Uh-huh.
it's really, we're curiosity driven, which is, curiosity as a strategy.
Yep.
It brings clarity, but it allows you to go, and look beyond what that data is. So, we'll get, well, 30% of people that come to our website is, are women,
Yep.
or, our customers are 30% women. We're going to ask why. Like, let's find out why. And is there some kind of insight that we can then use in our messaging and our marketing to segment and grow and amplify into that demographic that maybe we didn't uncover before? Or, as we talk through with, like, the C suite, we usually get, approached because of three reasons. Either someone comes, and goes, I think I have a tired brand. Like, our logo, which is 50 years old,
Mhm.
and it just, it doesn't really represent us anymore. And you can't really read the font, or it's Times New Roman font because it was, you know, done in 1970, whatever.
Mhm.
And what we were like, okay, we can do that, but why did what triggered this? And it's, oh, well, we're losing customers. Well, I mean, we're losing customers more faster than we can bring in customers. And I'm like, okay, well, that's not because of a logo problem.
Not at
This
all.
is, you're a 1,000-person staff. Um, you've been around for 50 years, and you guys have eroded like uh, um, your customer churn or whatever has been eroding for 5 years. So it's not the logo. Like, let's just, yes, we can refresh the logo, but it's really about how do we build, usually it's like as we start dissecting, we call it brand therapy. We get in there and kind of do an assessment and audit, workshops internally to kind of uncover the angst, the fear of which it's so interesting. We started calling our brand workshops brand therapy about a little over a year ago. And I would say the same stuff. Like we would say that like the homework's the same, the same it's the same activities to uncover what's in people's, hearts, minds, and souls. And but when I tacked on therapy, and we would say this is a that we need to hear the good, bad, and the ugly. This is going to be um, cathartic and therapeutic, and but there was still fear.
Sure.
Um,
Sure.
but I've just like, so we called it therapy, and then I have like in the room when we do workshops or like on virtual, I'll say, okay, we've got a section over here. It's called the couch that you can just express anything anonymously, like whatever your fears are, whatever is causing you tension around your work environment or the brand or customers, or if you have questions, because again, fear based, right? Of when people hear about brand, that means change.
Mm.
So there's a lot of fear around that. But yeah, when we started designing, it's fun. Now it's like, but people come out just expressing. There are no holdback, but but that's what, it's like we start uncovering it and it becomes, there's brand fragmentation, there's lack of clarity, there's inconsistency visually, there's inconsistency in the story, the voice and tone from social to the website to the brochures, the people internally, or the departments are in silos, they don't talk to each other. So there's no real like customer journey, there's no thought process. And that's all in branding, right? But then it becomes like, then we get oh, I need leads. So that's the other side we get is I need leads, I need revenue. And then we start looking through the advertising planning kind of, process. And what we uncover is, hey, we can generate, but you've got a marketing engine ecosystem problem. And so before you spend money here, let's fix the engine here so your time, money, and resources are spent more efficiently and more effectively. But if you are hiring like a marketing manager, marketing director at let's say $60,000 to $90,000 a year plus benefits or overhead, someone at that like salary level um, would d- most likely do not have the strategic skill sets to know how to navigate those planning processes. Their experience has probably been, even though they might have 20 years experience being a marketing director at this place or this place. But what we find is they have been managing tasks, not looking at where do you want to go business, point A to point B. Typically those level of people have never been marketing has never been seen as a strategic voice
Mm.
in the company. So they've always been treated, marketing has always been treated as an admin
Mm.
support staff. So, oh, those are the people that manage the trade shows. Those are the people that manage our website. Those are the people that do our internal events or produce our newsletters. We go to them when we need business cards. So they've, and so that's kind of sense of if you've hired somebody or if you have somebody on staff, who is the strategic voice in, you know, and a lot of times it's the CEO or whatever CEO going, well, I feel like I'm the strategist. Well, are you? Then what's the action plan? Like, how are you driving? How are you using your brand or the marketing P's to either uh, protect and defend your your market, your customers and your share of voice, or what are you doing to create demand where you need to create demand? And that's where we find that's where I get the jaw drop of, ooh, yeah, I'm not thinking that way. I don't have anybody on my team thinking that way.
Yeah.
And I've
And
only hired 4 tasks.
and that's awesome because I think that hits the nail on the head. That's why you go fractional.
Right,
Once you find that out, don't be afraid to discuss. Hey,
right,
maybe I don't quite know what I'm doing. Let me explain the situation because it sounds, Jennifer, that the ability to have that fractional person can not only fill in a temporary hole, but it might also help you realize what holes are there that you'd never seen before.
right. Oh, we uncover some crap. I mean, it's and the way, our agency's designed, again, there's a couple thousand or so agencies across the US that are designed like us, that have our same business model. But where I think, unique, at least in South Carolina in our region, is we're strategists. So we're fractional strategists with a fractional execution team that's dialing in on, we're building the playbooks, we're building the go-to-market plans. We are, creating consistency where there needs to be consistency. And then we're hitting the friction points wherever in the highest part, and pivoting um, based on um, I call it the budget, or how much does the company, how much do they want to stomach in growth? Do they need to accelerate faster where they've got to put money towards it so we can hit multiple friction points at once, or are we just crawling and walking with them, as and because that's all they can afford? um, but that's where we're unique, where we've got social media people, we've got art directors and visual designers and copywriters and content creators and podcast producers and video people, but we also have a team of strategists
Mhm.
that is playing oversight, building the plans, playing oversight. And then we've got the project management people that are again, hitting in a priority sense of, this is what we've all agreed on, that for you to get to point A to point B, we've got to tackle these 5 things immediately. And sometimes for small businesses, it means, you know what? You don't really need, like, we're going to do the bare minimum on social because we need to put our efforts, our time, money, and resources here. Um, and then we'll get back to the social, or we'll get to the SEO, or maybe sometimes it's like, no, you've got everything kind of buttoned up, but now we've got to work on the long runway of social and SEO. And so that's where we're going to put our focus. But we don't just jump in with what the business owner tells us. This is where I think I need to be. We come in and go, we're going to assess your entire business, and then we're going to work on the things you are making assumptions on, because that's going to be kind of the telltale as we build out the playbook of how do we prioritize. So, which again, it's not a unique approach for sure, but it is different than what I think most small businesses and mid-sized companies are used to having access to.
Sure. Makes sense. Now, and Jennifer, well, somebody is watching this podcast. Now, we've
Yeah.
said fractional. What do we mean by that? What is fractional? Why would you
Yeah.
mean fractional? You know?
So, yeah, no, that's a great question. So when I build out, I call like the staffing plans for companies who are like, okay, we want to use you as full service, right? Build our plan. So a fractional might be, okay, for the first 90 days, 60 to 90 days, you're going to have or based on your budget, you can only afford 200 hours
Well,
of our agency time of our team. We're the 200 first, like 60 to 90 days, that 200 hours is going to be is all going to be focused on building the plan, doing the assessment, therapy, workshops, all of that. And that's really going to be front loaded with more strategy players on the team. And even then, 200 hours, I mean, if you look at and I don't know if people, you and I are versed in this space because we come from service background where we have billable hours that
we do.
and billable goals that's our business structure.
Yep.
um I don't that is not normal conversation at other, in other spaces, right? Manufacturers, bankers, they're it's like that no one's even that down to go, you're going to hire a social media person for your one brand working on 3 platforms. That's 2,000 hours a year, or I would say 1,800 if you know, 1,800 a year when you include vacations, holidays, or whatever, working 36, 37 hours a week, right? It's 1,800 hours. So that's kind of like the baseline of that's an FTE.
Mhm.
Um, and uh, I'm like, when we work on things fractionally, for brands, like our full-time social media person who is working more like 2,000 hours a year, they work on 10 different companies,
And
working
that right
all
there,
of those. So when you think of like the capacity of you're hiring a full to work on and you don't even have it tied to ROI,
yeah,
or at least. And when I say ROI, because I also don't want to criticize people who social media is a long runway. So if you're expecting someone that you've hired, whether you've outsourced that or they are an in-house person, it's like, unless you're literally throwing money, paid advertising in correlation or along with your organic, it is a long, you don't expect sale. It's to build credibility, it's to build trust, it is to have consistency. Um, Even if you're doing like a Shopify or anything like, you're going to have to boost it or have some kind of paid media function to hit your goals. It is not an organic, fast
sure,
results. So I think that's the other, like, most owners haven't thought about even ROI from a runway perspective. But yeah, from the front, so like, you know, about full time, it's, for one person, that's 100, straight 40 hour, around 40 hours a week.
sure,
That's 160 hours. So if we're 200 hours, you're going to get a mix of communications, specialist, strategist. Um, but if we're doing audits, it might be a mix of um, SEO and digital people, kind of doing an audit on the footprint. So you might have 5 or 6 people in that first month working, doing an audit, but it's heavy on the strategist. Then as you start rolling with the plan, depending on the priorities and or what we outlined in the plan, each month of those 200 hours, it could be a mix of social media people, or it could be, art directors, creative copywriters, campaign builders, media specialists if we're managing a lot of media. Um, but you're getting highly specialized people and the use of um, our tools, like our proprietary and advanced tools to do predictive modeling on advertising, to buy efficiently, that you as a company don't have to purchase, right? You don't have to manage that. But that's what it means by fractional. You're getting, a team of people that is strategic oversight with an execution team in a fractional sense of, my lead gen person, my email person might only be touching your business 10 hours a month.
well,
Um, but because they're servicing 10, 15 other clients. But The 10 hours they have, there's deliverables, there's a return, there's actions that we hold them accountable to because we're all trying to work towards this overarching goal that we're reporting on every month and going, this isn't working, this is working, or we're finding friction that as we started working this uncovered some friction, we need to pivot. um but you have a whole team of people doing that versus what your one person, your marketing person that is more of a project manager, just kind of being an admin support for internally. That's all they're doing.
Mhm.
It's not towards an action. And most likely they have to go, hey, I need a graphics person, or I'm not a PR person. I need a PR person. So typically we find that if companies have sometimes 1 to sometimes 3 to 5 people that are all managing tasks,
Mhm.
um, but they're not managing outcomes.
And that's
Does
a good
that
point too. I
Yeah,
mean, yeah, no, I think that's a beautiful explanation, Jennifer, because also, I'm a big adage of, hey, additional eyes are always a good thing.
right,
And, hiring fractional, guess what? They're going to be in there, but also it's the onus is all on the group that hires you, the firm that hires
right,
you, the small business that hires you. Hey, how do we best implement this? But I do think once they sort of unleash you into the system, I liked how you were like, hey, I want to see things that your person who's there all the time, who's enmeshed in that system, is missing trees for the forest. You
right.
know?
Right. And we talked to like some of these marketing departments. I mean, I had a conversation with an industrial company here in this region. I mean, they've got 2,000 employees, right? They are, they're obviously a national company, 2,000 employees. The majority of them are in this region.
Mhm.
They have a marketing team of 10 people. Um, and I asked the CEO, I was like, okay, well, what's the growth plan? Well, we've always grown 5%. Okay, was that guaranteed? Like, and how do you get there? Is this to defend and protect
Mhm.
your customers, or do you have to create demand? Never heard of I've never And I said, "Well, and then what's the action plan?" Well, we spend, 5 million in marketing, not including labor that they've hired. So they spend 2 million in trade shows, another million in like advertising, another like million amongst like 3 or 4 agencies that they spread SEO to. We need videos and content created, or collateral material design, and then we need to print those. So yeah, like a 5 million. So you include labor in that. Yeah, they're probably at 7, 8 million in a marketing budget to increase 5%, that with no action plan. So I was like, so he was, so then I talked to well, I'm sure they have an action plan. I'm sure the marketing people, it's a whole department. Surely there's an action plan. So we start talking to them, just more of like interview, focus group, non-confrontational, just kind of and they were like, yeah, I don't think our company sees the value of marketing. We're
Mhm.
seen as admin. Um, the we manage 2 million in trade shows. It's not appreciated. So you like, and we do. And I was like, well, who determines the where do you go and trade? Because it's what we've always done. And I was like, does it generate business? I don't know. And I'm
Mm.
like, so just like start uncovering um, uh, those kind of questions. But it's like, okay, that's a company of that size, but we run into that all the time. But I think that there's this myth from a small to mid-sized enterprise that, oh, they must have their shit together, or or because they're everywhere, or they do trade shows, social media, they have these like SEO, then that's what we have to then hire all for that, because that's kind of, it's just what you do. It's overhead, but it's
Mhm.
not tied to anything. So even just like the simple, I'm like, look, let's just take trade shows. It's an easy, tangible thing.
Mhm.
And we had their trade show. I was like, go look. I was like, can you look in your system? Because you have Salesforce, right? Which I hate, by the way. I would never recommend that. And neither would our entire tech team
Why, Jennifer?
out there
Hit me
for
real
small
quick. Why?
business. Yeah. From small business to mid-sized enterprise. It's crazy expensive um, for what you get. And then it's designed where you have to then hire people to be your Salesforce person
Hmm,
versus it is it is a pipeline management, but it's not a marketing automation tool. And um, there's so many other systems that are like a tenth of the price that has all the same bells and whistles.
hmm,
So that's why I'm like, unless you're like the Michelins or the Millikins of the world where you are at scale,
mhm.
um, don't do the and a lot of times Salesforce has like they've Frankenstacked like for certain for certain industries, but like I know a small business that was spending 20 grand a month on both Salesforce and then you get sold into that you need now the Sales Cloud. Um, and all of a sudden you're a 5-7 million dollar business that wants to be 25 million in 5 years, and you're spending so much on tools that for what you need you could be spending 2,500 to $5,000 a month, including us as a fractional to manage it.
It's funny you put it that way, Jennifer, because the way I understand fractional now, because you've really educated me today, is that you guys provide the infrastructure that a business may not need and may never need,
Right,
but you're there.
right.
And if you come to you, know it. I guess a big thing about it is, how do you make folks realize that fractional is the way, Jennifer? Like, what's your sales pitch? You're in the elevator with
Yeah,
somebody, fractional. How do you make it happen?
yeah. So I try to make it. Um, I know it sounds more complex, but it's we are a you get a strategy oversight, so a strategist with an execution team that helps you crawl, walk, run, that accelerates your growth. I
Mm,
mean, that's kind of it in a nutshell. Um, and we do that because you do not need a full time art director, PR person, social media person, um, CMO. That's a by the way, a good CMO runs you 250 easily a year.
mm,
250. I
sure.
mean, um, so you get that kind of level of thinking. You also get a research designer on that. You get project managers and so yeah, when I do my staff, I'm like, you're not getting those full time. You're getting access to those specialties um, to attack the priorities um, of the friction that we've uncovered. So you're not hiring for SEO unless you need it, unless it comes out in the plan that that is the barrier to get you growth. Like we're not selling a product. We're we're selling we're selling your growth is what we're
That makes so much sense because, I think you're right, and I've heard people describe it as getting ahead of your skis.
yeah,
You're a company and you're like, I've got to have this, I've got to have
yeah.
that, I've got to have this. And it's almost like they're collecting houses on Monopoly. And
Yes.
instead you're saying, whoa, calm down,
Right.
so
You're
if you want to run the
don't build a
board,
fiefdom here.
that's right. Said,
Right.
guess what? You can be much more nimble, much more cost conservative, much more ROI focused by not having those things in house.
Right.
Indeed, it's easier for you to not have them in house than to have to focus on having them in the house and then wonder why,
Right.
you're not getting, the benefits you thought you would from it.
Right. And to focus to go where cuz we can't work in a silo either. So we are cuz that's another thing. I think it's a weird myth or something that sometimes when we walk away from prospects
Mhm,
is because the CEO will be like, well, who might be like, who's our point?
mhm.
Like, we've got to integrate and align. Like we're going to be operating here as your marketing department in a box, right?
True.
When we work best, it's like we're meeting with the executive team, we're meeting with like the management team on some kind of cadence, so that we're all connected. No different of if you had a marketing department, and you're branch manager at a bank, you would know who your marketing director is, right? And you'd have access. Well, we're that. So we need to make sure that we're accessible, we're visible, and we can't operate kind of in that vacuum.
Sure.
When I hear from like some small businesses who are like, so if I just release you, it frees up my time. I'm like, well, who's going to meet with us to make sure that our data is aligning? We got to integrate into systems. Who do we work with? And they're like, oh, so you're gonna make me spend time with you. And we're like, yeah. It's like, or you can delegate it, but don't think that we're just like we can operate over here managing an ad campaign, without meeting whatever it is, once a month, couple times a month,
I
to
mean,
do check-ins.
instant
That's when we
gratification.
we
We've all,
walk away. That's when we
you know,
walk
but
away.
that's why I think the fractional is a great thing. If you
Yeah.
guys look at the pie chart, guess what? You're a slice of it. And that
Right.
means that you're there with the rest of the pie.
Right.
It's a cohesive whole, but you guys don't necessarily show up to work every day like everybody else, but you're
Right.
there,
But
you
we're
know?
there, and we can, like, we design things where or design kind of programs for clients, like if they need, um uh, the strategist to show up in a leadership meeting, we're there.
Good.
Like we show up, we present board packets of like what's marketing doing. So we kind of take on the role of anything that you would think of, walking down the hallway, or in offices now that have, um, most for their virtual teams, we're a phone call away, no different as a teammate.
There you go.
We've just tried to build in some operation, system, so that we have a ticketing email, that you send an email, and based on the subject line, or whatever you're asking, it goes to the appropriate the
That's
to
awesome.
the team.
Yep.
But yeah, we're uh, clients use us both as strategy, oversight. Obviously, that's front loaded. That's really heavy at the beginning, and then we release more of the execution team. And there's always oversight. It's just not as heavy.
Sure.
And then there's some like you know programs that we've had clients on that were on the third or fourth or fifth year. The strategist kind of comes in and goes, okay, let's set the plan. Ooh, the monthly data. Are we asking these things? Are we doing these versus, you know, some of like a client that may be on, on the first year, a lot more strategic eyeballs, a lot more like research that's being done, hand holding through change management, culture building. Because as I say, it's, we are imperfect humans managing imperfect humans,
Sure.
and marketing, in general, in a company, if you just make any kind of change or ask any kind of a question, that it kind of sets off people.
It does.
Um, so from a law firm, because how do you guys do your marketing lead referral? Is it all just word of mouth? Is it you just doing events and speaking engagements and
It
carrying?
depends on the attorney, Jennifer. Man, it's a great way to ask it because, I use social, I present, your clients refer you to other people.
Right,
I'm with a client today because of another client saying, hey, here's my attorney, talk to him.
right,
So it really depends on what you're looking at. You've always heard over the years, focus your marketing, do this.
yeah,
Attorneys are terrible at it. We are not taught this in law school. I do think we probably are much more focused on having the structural marketing support rather than a fractional, just because we think that's what works best.
yeah,
Again, I think your ROI is something critical to ask. And is that question asked enough? I don't know. But again, a lot of attorneys don't like, and I know that sounds strange because it's how
yeah,
we are, But
Yeah,
you've got to
you
try.
either have like on the spectrum of, the 888s and the
Yeah,
222.
that's right.
Let's get all the billboards in the back of the
Yeah,
phone.
you've got the guys you see everywhere, and you've got attorneys who prefer never to be seen. And then that's what our marketing folks have to deal with is like, hey, if you won't work, you've got to have a client. And so,
Right.
how do we get you from you to client and then make it stick?
Yeah.
Because keeping them is probably the most important thing.
Yes.
But no, I mean, it's a really great thing. There's no one size fits all. There
Mm-mm.
simply isn't. And I think you'd see vast differences between firms A and B here in Greenville and
Oh,
more
yeah.
too compared to
Well,
somebody
so
outside.
it's the same thing as agencies. And that's what I was like, just like you guys don't have a formula for going getting your business and even that's what I caught the myth buster of. If you have any agency that goes, I have a formula, I can get you 10x.
Yeah.
I was like,
I
red
mean,
flag, red flag, red flag.
absolutely. And the same thing. If you hear an attorney who says he or she can do everything to all
Right.
clients at all times, run. Just
Run.
run. It's going to end badly. And
Yeah.
again, like we talked about in our segment about AI, about being a confident liar,
Yeah.
there are a lot of people who will oversell. And I think
Mhm.
that today, I'm amazed that, hey, the fractional thing is something everybody should consider, but you've got to be
Right.
brave enough to ask those questions.
Right.
And you've got to be brave enough to kind of shake the boat a little bit and say, hey,
Yeah.
we've got a system, but is that a system that's providing ROI?
Right.
Our ROAS, what are we getting out of this? Are we
That's
doing
right.
it just because it's a habit? Or are we
Right.
doing it because there's an actual return that benefits us?
Right. What's the intentionality behind it? Do we know the purpose of these activities? I mean, that's the biggest thing that we kind of sit. I mean, even when we coach small businesses in the accelerators of, hey, when you map out your 3 year SGAP, like that strategic growth action plan, all those activities, there's intentionality behind it. But
Yep.
before they walked in that classroom, they were spending money, and it's the coaches that are like, well, why are you spending it? Like, what's the return for that? Or, as we kind of say in the accelerators, if you're spending money, um, whatever you're spending outside needs to come back and be returned with cousins,
Yep.
preferably 3. you because you just don't want the same, the break evens. But it's like going through of, the bigger the company, obviously they most likely have their break evens. They've got, their numbers, they know their margins. They know like the operation side. It's just like they haven't aligned marketing activities, or even like people strategies or process. Like they haven't aligned all of that to make the engine work harder. Um, but yeah, that's I think that's another little, like a little myth out there of the intentionality behind
That's right.
everything.
And,
Yeah,
and you're asking the hard question because, like you said, when you talk with a CEO or CMO who's like, oh my gosh, you're going to interact with me.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
Like,
what
oh,
you
you're asking me tough questions,
absolutely,
right?
And it's like if you don't do that, you can put it on automatic and then you're going to get back to automatic
Right.
same old, same old.
Right. But I was like, you reached out for a reason. And most of it has come because you're either losing customers or you've hired really good people because you, for whatever reason, whatever number data you were using, you were projecting the pipeline to be filled. And
Mhm.
now the pipeline, there's too much capacity and you're going to lose people if, um, if their capacity, their inventory isn't filled, or you're sitting on inventory
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
it's not offloaded. So that's where we get the calls when whatever content we put out there, it triggers oh my gosh, like that is me. That's
Mhm.
my scenario. I'm in some pain, right? And we can help solve most of the pain points.
Yep.
What I can't solve is, uh, you know, there's things where we can identify that goes, uh, when we come in, like especially with legacy organizations, larger organizations, and I know this is gonna you're gonna feel this
Mhm.
because we a lot of times, we do employee engagement surveys,
Yep.
but as you know, people might they go work for a company, but they quit the manager.
Mhm. That's right.
because it's like what 80-90% of the reason why people leave is because of their direct supervisors. But most companies, as they grow and scale, only promote people not because they're great leaders or great managers. It's because a slot was open.
Mm-hmm.
They needed to have more managerial or supervisory um, uh, uh, oversight
Mm-hmm.
in that department, but they didn't train that person how to manage.
Sure. And now there they are.
And
And these
now there they
employees
are.
below them are like, oh, wow,
Oh,
what's
wow.
this?
Or you get people that are frustrated to go, I'm in this, but and there's no career path for me. And so, you know, oh well, I'm just going to be the best, the best assistant, but I'm not going to lead. I'm not going to shine. I'm not going to, because there's no growth path here.
Sure.
So we see, so those are the things that we can only identify to go, you have low engagement, or you've got, like I just did a workshop with a company who, again, we're working through teaching people the new narrative around the brand. Like, how do
Mm.
you talk about the brand? It's we did very little tweaks to the we just refreshed it, right? We evolved it. We didn't do a Cracker Barrel. the that the revolution, we just did a little minor evolution, but we gave more clarity around the brand. And as we're talking about it, we also culture is basically the brand internally, how it's manifested internally.
Sure.
um so as we start talking about, like, well, what do you feel the we get the culture immediately becomes, I get a call from the HR manager and they're like, my phone is being flooded by when we hear they heard that you were going to do a culture um, training.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've got a list of things I think we need to maybe structure your workshop to spend half of the day on, like, dress code and consistency around, like, vacations, and how do you deal with this, and how do you, and it was all compliance
Sure.
issue policies. And I was like, so they heard the word culture and immediately flooded HR department with, okay, well, then you need to teach us how to be consistent around compliance.
Hmm.
And I said, I don't think we need to do that. I think we need to take a step back and let's build some training workshops around what it means to lead,
Sure.
and how do we empower people who have never felt empowered before, um, to, like, all the issues they brought up, those are things that are in their control, that are in they are empowered to manage their own people, like policy on like cell phone usage in in their department.
Yeah, absolutely.
um
You know?
so I'm like, yeah, you might have a discussion of, here's kind of the overarching. I said, but if your culture is supposed to be about independence and autonomy and fun, do you really want to create a handbook and then just do a compliance,
Yeah.
like, have a I said, it it's a balance. You got to have some of that because of, boundaries and guardrails, but these are managers who can help develop what those policies are versus just relying on an HR department
To
uh,
do it.
to do it. So let's flip it and let's have them talk about what that means. To what does a cell phone policy really mean? What is a dress code? What should it be? And then let's talk about leading from their seat, because they've never been challenged that way before. So those are the fun things. But again, when people become, um, you know, they're not going to be able to lead, that's where a CEO or a COO or whatever um, have to have, like, this person's not going to get us to the next chapter.
Yep.
I do not have the authority to let people go. It just become, you create the environment where it becomes really clear of, these are people who are going to take you to the next, to the next chapter.
Uh-huh.
These people are really good at their craft. They're sustainers, but they aren't going to, they're not change management people. but you need to keep you need to keep them happy and try to make them ambassadors for where we're going. And I was like, and these people, they're your detractors and they're cancer in your organization, and you need to figure out exit strategies for these folks.
Sure.
Like,
Jennifer,
that's
and
about as close as I do. Like,
I
yeah.
mean, this has been an awesome conversation
Yeah.
today. What sort of last thought do you have for anybody thinking
Yeah.
fractional or hesitant about fractional?
So, reach out to us and we can have that conversation to figure out where are you struggling? Because again, as senior executives in their business, you can feel it. Like your gut instinct of something is not working is always right. Like you just haven't figured out where that tension is coming from. And it might be like very clear tension of we've lost business. We're seeing or we're not seeing the customers. It's been really easy, because there's some categories of like, hey, this category has been on fire and we've grown with it. And
Mhm.
now that demand is not there. Now we're seeing plateau or we're seeing a decline. So sometimes it's obvious from a revenue or a sales, but they don't know how to adjust what they're doing. And they've either gone like tried to manage an internal team or they've tried to hire people and they just don't feel like they're getting the traction.
Mhm.
That's where it's like, give us a call. Let's do because I do free discovery calls just to kind of uncover where the tension um,
Good.
lies and see if we can be of help, right? So that's kind of the one. And then the fractional is like, you need to have the mindset of if why do you feel like you need to have people on site on staff? Is it a control thing?
Hmm.
Is it a fiefdom thing? Is it a, you know, well, what will I lose with it? And then I would kind of flip it and go, well, what do I think there can be a lot of gains of are you using all of those people at their fullest at 1,800 hours? Are you seeing the ROI on that 1,800 hours a year? Are you even able to assess what they've done positively
Yeah.
that has affected your bottom line? Um, and usually when we kind of ask those questions, it becomes ooh, I've never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
I have no idea that what they do for 18. I don't know about you, but when I throw out those numbers, they're like 1,800 hours. Like
What?
it's a lot of hours. um, and it's yeah. So those how the conversations go. But don't be kind of let down your guard. And kind of what we've learned, and you've heard this in the um, ecosystem space, working with companies. When you start your company, you have a lot of people with the startup mindset, even yourself. And then you're builders, you're building, and then you get to a point you need to change your mindset to be scale, systems, processes,
Yep.
and how do you scale from that? And we call it like new level, new devil, right? It's a different mindset. Sometimes it might be different team members, or you've got to work to change manage the mindset of your team to go from builder to scaler. And then when you've grown, now you've got maybe a mix of people we need innovators and builders in this area, but we need sustainers in these areas. And it's either a different mindset of leadership, it's a different mindset of, how you've grown in those departments, but to keep kind of the innovation alive. And I don't think that that's how people think about when they hire. They look at skill set of or what I call on paper experience and not necessarily the right mindset for the right um, place and time of what they need for the company in that moment. Or and we that's what fractionally we have people that we know, okay, we're in the mode, we got to change our mindset, they're in build mode, or no, we're in scale mode. Um and it's a mindset shift, and we there's different tactics that go into those different areas. So Yeah. I don't know. Did I answer that question?
Well, I
Kind of
think you did.
rambled.
No, absolutely. It's good. This has been fun.
This has been fun and long, but I appreciate you letting me ramble, and I appreciate you coming on
Hey, man,
and
always
telling
a
me
blast.
all of your good stuff with AI and with IP and with legal, because we serve the same
We do.
sector.
We absolutely do. You know,
We're here to help companies um, mitigate
whether they
risk,
know it or not, right?
whether they know it or not. Mitigate risk and grow and scale without bumpiness
Yes.
as much as or as less as possible. All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on,
Oh,
and
thank you for having me.
and we'll put all like the tag stuff and to so people can get a hold of you, Doug,
Thank you. No, this
and
was
get
fun. And
your
plus, it's a little
advice.
different. You know, I like the fact it wasn't just this typical "well, there and hit you with facts." So it's just an easy flowing convo.
That's
You
right.
know,
That's we had to do it. I'm a rambler.
no, it worked, man. I think it worked well. You know,
I
you'll see
think
what
it
you
did
think of the
too.
video, but it seemed to come across really good.
It did. And I like until next time, we will see all of our listeners again next week. Adios.
Bye, Jennifer.
Bye.